best athlete or the best looking guy or the smartest guy or hitting fourth in the baseball team. But the one thing I could do that was what made me feel good, and I got a few positive affirmations for, a few attaboys, was I knew how to sail a little bit better than all the other guys around. And all of a sudden people started hearing about Dennis, this kid from San Diego, including Ted Turner. And Ted Turner was a well-known yachtsman from Atlanta. Some of you remember the fact he did race in the America's Cup. And Ted was up against some good sailors from Newport, Rhode Island, where the America's Cup really started its roots in the United States. And he knew that he was going to need some help to win the America's Cup. So he called Dennis, this cup. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background information on what the cup really is and how it got started. And it really began in the mid-1800s when America was going through the Industrial Revolution, and they were starting to feel pretty good about themselves as a country, and their self-image was changing, and they wanted to show the British, who ran the world at that time, that they were coming of age. So they built a sailboat in 1850, and they sailed it across the Atlantic, and they raced against the finest British boats in the south of England, around the Isle of Wight, and they won the one race they went in by quite a bit. And of course, they were very proud, and they got a small trophy, 31 inches high, and weighs about 35 pounds, silver urn. That's kind of ugly, actually, but they were very proud of it. And they brought it back to New York, and they were members of the small club at the time known as the New York Yacht Club. And they put it in the yacht club and deeded it over to the yacht club, and that became known as the America's Cup. After the sixth race, we were tied, 3 wins apiece. And remember, it's the best 4 of 7. So the fourth race, we went out, and we led the whole way around the race. It was about a 3-hour race, 22.5 miles, until the very last leg of the last race, and they passed us, and they won the cup by 29 seconds. So for the first time in 131 years, it was nice of the video not to tell you that not only I won it, the America's Cup, but I was also the first man to ever lose it after 131 years. Over the period of a year or so that we practiced in Hawaii, that 2 and 2 added up to 6. I think what happened is that everybody raised their level of the game. They just felt compelled to because everyone alongside was so committed. We hear a lot about the commitment to teams now in some of the professional sports because of the kind of hot dogging going on. And some of the older folks say, no, this is a team deal. And this was the same for us. Our team really rose above their old former ability. Whatever they used to be able to be, their level of sailing was, they were able to go beyond it because of their commitment here. And they got better and better, and the better they got, the more they felt comfortable. And they couldn't operate at a low level anymore. They had to operate at a high level. And we won every start and led at every mark and won the America's Cup in 4 straight races and brought it back to America. One idea I had was to get the money from Donald Trump, because he had just built the Trump Plaza there on 5th Avenue. Some of you have seen that big gold place there across from the plaza. And he was really riding high. So I had the idea to go and see the Donald and take a model of the 12 meters that we were racing and paint it gold, and I was going to call it Trump Card. And then my idea was, for the Donald, was, well, we're going to go win the cup, and then we're going to bring the cup back to Atlantic City, and we'll all be rich. But most of you are too young to remember this story, but he also owned the New Jersey Generals then. It was one of the first New York teams in the AFL, as we know it now. And he just signed Doug Flutie as a rookie quarterback from Canada. Well, that very next weekend, after I waited for 6 hours to get past all the German Shepherds to see him, that very next weekend, Doug Flutie broke his leg. So now the Donald's focused on the New Jersey Generals and Doug Flutie, and it's Dennis Hu. But as a salesman, I called every few days to see Norma, how am I doing? When can I pick up the check? Isn't it great to have the cup back in New Jersey, and so on and so forth? And finally, after about 3 weeks, she got kind of tired of having me call. And plugging up her phone, she said, "Dennis, to tell you the truth, this is just not going to work for you." So after my first sigh of disappointment, being of sound mind, and this model that I built, the Donald, was quite expensive. I asked her, well, is there any chance I could have the model back? She said, I wouldn't think so. So I'm convinced to this day that that model is still in Ivana's garage somewhere on her wall. And the catamaran, very innovative, could, in 5 knots of wind, it could go 15 knots, and in 10 knots of wind, it could go 25 knots, and in 15 knots of wind, it could go 35 knots. Well, this was very fast for a sailboat. So, make a long story short again, we actually have to have the race, and the catamaran is so far ahead of the monohull from New Zealand that you can't even see them at the end. But those New Zealanders, they just would not go away. So now the Cup stays in Auckland, New Zealand, because they just successfully defended it. But there was a guy by the name of Ernesto Bertarelli, who owns Serena Drug Pharmaceutical Company from Switzerland, that has been racing for some time, that decided, well, this looks like a fun thing to participate in. It looks like there's a lot of other Bs, as in billionaires, involved, Paul Allen and Greg McCaw and Hasso Plattner, and it looks like a good event. So he thought to himself, well, how can I go about winning this event? So he went out with an RFP, request for proposals, on who wants to have the America's Cup. So what will happen now? Well, what will happen is that Valencia will be a wonderful spot for the America's Cup, because it's come full circle. It started out, don't forget, with the rich and wealthy Americans challenging Great Britain for supremacy at sea. And then we went to Sir Thomas Lipton against Lord Dunraven, and the Morgans and the Vanderbilts all played the game. It's always been, not always been, but many, many times it's been rich and powerful guys using the cup for entertainment and to do deals. And so, thank you very much for having me.